l'Union africaine.
لمنصب رئيس مفوضية الاتحاد الإفريقي سأرافقكم اليوم باللغة
Ladies and gentlemen, I will be moderating in French, and I am pleased to say that I'll be sharing this platform.
أنيتا هيرسكين من غانا. مساء الخير على الوزراء أيها السيدة والسيدات. نائبة رئيس مفوضية الاتحاد الإفريقي مونيك نزازانا بانغوا، بالشخصية الإفريقية المرموقة، أصحاب السعادة، السفراء، أيها
Across all 55 member states of the African Union, we have immense pleasure to come to you live from the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, Addis Ababa specifically, where we are here from the African Union headquarters, bringing you what we call a historic moment. 3 esteemed candidates, each vying for the position of chairperson of the African Union, will debate tonight in front of the world, and indeed, historic it is.
Mesdames et messieurs, durant le débat de Mjadala Africa qui durera 2 heures en direct, nous allons pouvoir vous présenter les différents candidats à la tête de la Commission de l'Union africaine. On abordera avec eux plusieurs thématiques majeures, des dossiers urgents du continent africain. Ils répondront à plusieurs questions préparées par un panel indépendant pour que vous puissiez justement, mesdames et messieurs, savoir comment et quelle est leur vision pour mener le continent africain et cette haute instance qu'est l'Union africaine vers l'épanouissement et le développement. Le timing sera égal pour chaque candidat. 5 minutes seront respectées par chacun d'entre eux. Alors, en première partie, les candidats auront 5 minutes pour se présenter à vous et présenter leur vision en tant que président de la Commission de l'Union africaine et leur vision afin d'aider justement la Commission de l'Union africaine à réaliser toutes ses aspirations ou les aspirations de l'agenda 2063. Ensuite, on abordera avec eux les différentes questions de ce débat. 4 minutes leur seront dédiées pour y répondre dans les 4 rounds des questions prévues et à la fin, chaque candidat aura 2 minutes pour le mot de clôture.
Ladies and gentlemen, in Jadala Africa Leadership Debate, we'll see our 3 esteemed candidates before you, basically sharing their ideas and their ambitions as far as the aspirations of Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, are concerned. And ladies and gentlemen, the rules are very simple. Each one of our candidates will have an opportunity to present themselves, of course, and their ambition as well, and they will make these presentations for all of 5 minutes each. Afterwards, we go into the first round of questions, second, third, and fourth round of questions. Each candidate has 4 minutes to answer the questions in each of these rounds. And now, ladies and gentlemen, at the end, we have a 2-minute closing remark from each one of our candidates. Now that you understand why you're here and the rules have been set before you, also to mention that the questions you will be hearing tonight, the questions our esteemed candidates will be receiving, are questions created by a completely independent panel in order to promote peace, fairness, and transparency among us all. Ladies and gentlemen, with that established, allow me to welcome to the stage Ambassador Konjit, who is the chair of the African Union's panel of eminent Africans and the host of our gathering here tonight, to share the significance of the election process of the African Union. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ambassador Konjit.
Mesdames et messieurs, on est ravis à présent d'inviter tout de suite son Excellence, Madame l'ambassadeur Konjit Sine Georgis, à prononcer son allocution d'ouverture.
Excellencies, candidates, for the post of chairmanship of the African Commission, Excellencies, ambassadors, fellow Africans, ladies and gentlemen. Heartfelt greetings to our live audience here at the African Union Commission in Addis Ababa and all African citizens watching this debate. On behalf of the panel of eminent Africans, it is an honor and a pleasure to welcome you all to the 2024 Mujadala Africa Leadership Debate. Tonight's event represents a critical milestone in our collective journey towards achieving the Africa we want under Agenda 2063. I must say, now more than ever before, we need a united Africa and an effective AU Commission. The world we live in is at a crossroads with many complex situations. This continent of ours has gone through numerous challenges in its history. Its people have paid huge sacrifice to be where we are today. The trajectory of going out of colonial legacy to move to the Africa we want stands as testimony. We understand that our dreams and aspirations will not take us anywhere unless we come together. I had the immense pleasure as a young cadet of having seen the birth of the organization, the OAU, the Organization of African Unity, and followed its transformation to the African Union. I have seen their highs and lows. But one thing is for sure, if the African Union had not existed, we would have had to invent it. We have a long way to go to reach the Africa we want by 2063. The African Union Commission, our only vehicle to take us to our destination, has to be strong and fit for the purpose. We have to face together our current and future challenges, narrow inequalities, build more just and inclusive societies, resolve conflicts, in short, provide to our citizens what they are expecting. It has become more and more clear that the African Union has a rightful place on the global stage. It has become a partner that can't be easily pushed aside. We are claiming our place where decisions are made regarding our continent. Africa is coming out of age. This evening, the three candidates to the post of the chairpersonship of the African Union Commission are going to participate in a debate. I regret that the fact that our continent couldn't also have a female candidate and place the African Union Commission on the right side of history. This is a serious homework we have to take into consideration. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I have the greatest honor and privilege to thank the general public for participating and for their interest in this process by sending questions. I would also like them to know that the concerns expressed by the public are taken care of in the questions. And now, ladies and gentlemen and excellencies, I have the duty and the honor to hand over to the moderators the questions sealed envelope. Thank you very much for your attention.
Merci infiniment, Excellence, Madame l'ambassadeur Konjit Sine-Giorgis, honorable assistance, chers téléspectateurs, eh bien, ce que vous allez voir maintenant en direct, c'est que son Excellence, Madame l'ambassadeur, Madame Konjit Sine-Giorgis, va nous faire parvenir à ma chère consoeur Anita et moi-même des enveloppes. Elles contiennent les questions que nous allons pouvoir poser ce soir, Anita et moi-même, aux différents candidats potentiels à l'élection à la tête de la Commission de l'Union africaine. Merci beaucoup, Excellence.
Ladies and gentlemen, as Fatima has outlined, Her Excellency the Ambassador has handed over the questions that have been curated by an independent panel. As we mentioned, there will be 4 rounds, and here in my hand we have 4 envelopes sealed, and these envelopes will only be opened at the forefront of each one of the rounds.
Merci infiniment, Anita. Mesdames et messieurs, nous vous présentons à présent les différents candidats à l'élection de la Commission de l'Union africaine. Excellence, Monsieur Mahamadou Ali Youssouf, ministre des Affaires étrangères du Djibouti. Excellence, Monsieur Raila Amolo Odinga, ancien Premier ministre du Kenya. Enfin, Excellence, Monsieur Richard Randriaman Drato, ancien ministre des Affaires étrangères de Madagascar.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is with pride and honor that we invite our 3 esteemed candidates to now take their position on the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor of welcoming His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Foreign Affairs Minister, Djibouti. Also joining us will be His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga, former Prime Minister, Kenya. And we have His Excellency Richard J. Randyamandrato, who is from Madagascar. Ladies and gentlemen, with humility, I ask that you give them another round of applause. These are our candidates for the chairperson position of the African Union.
Messieurs, bonsoir et merci d'être parmi nous ce soir. Vous êtes en direct, des millions de téléspectateurs vous suivent à présent dans le Mjadala Africa Debate. Vous avez, comme présenté auparavant, 5 minutes chacun pour que vous vous présentiez. Alors on va commencer tout de suite avec vous, Excellence, Monsieur Mahmoud Ali Youssouf de Djibouti.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, honorable Raila Odinga, honorable Richard James, Madame la vice-présidente de la Commission de l'Union africaine, Mesdames et Messieurs, citoyennes et citoyens de l'Afrique, bonsoir. Je m'appelle Mahmoud Ali Youssouf. J'ai 59 ans, marié, père de 8 enfants, ministre des Affaires étrangères de mon pays depuis 20 ans. Je me tiens devant vous ce soir pour vous exposer succinctement ma vision et les ambitions que je porte pour notre continent. L'Afrique se trouve à une étape cruciale de son évolution. Certes, en retard par rapport aux autres continents en matière d'intégration, de paix et de sécurité et de développement socio-économique. Mais l'Afrique avance, l'Afrique s'organise et l'Afrique se positionne sur la scène internationale. L'Afrique que nous voulons intégrer, pacifique et prospère, c'est d'abord le choix de nos peuples avant d'être le choix de nos dirigeants. Les pères fondateurs de l'OUA en 1963, à nos dirigeants d'aujourd'hui, qui ont institué l'Union africaine il y a plus de 20 ans, jusqu'aux citoyens lambda, le panafricanisme est ce qui nous rassemble et consolide notre diversité et cimente l'unité du continent. En adoptant l'agenda 2063 et en posant les jalons des 5 plans décennaux, pour réaliser ces objectifs, l'Union africaine s'est donné la feuille de route pour y arriver. La Commission de l'Union africaine a la responsabilité d'orienter, de coordonner et de mettre à exécution les décisions des organes décisionnels. Si je suis élu à la tête de la Commission, je m'engage à rehausser le niveau de performance et de mise en œuvre de nos actions communes, estimé seulement à 37% à l'issue du premier plan décennal 2013-2024. En matière de paix et de sécurité, la prévention et l'alerte rapide, à travers le système continental d'alerte rapide, fera l'objet d'un renforcement concerté. Le Conseil de paix et de sécurité devra être plus proactif et les États membres en portent une responsabilité indéniable. Le comité des sages devra obtenir les moyens de continuer efficacement son travail de médiation. J'agirai de sorte que les ressources nécessaires soient mobilisées afin de rendre réellement opérationnelles les forces en attente et je plaiderai pour une flexibilité dans l'utilisation des ressources du Fonds de la paix. Je poursuivrai avec les instances compétentes les réformes non mises en application à ce jour. Je travaillerai à mobiliser et diversifier les sources de financement pour les programmes de l'Union. Et je m'attellerai à la tâche d'autonomiser financièrement l'Union africaine. L'intégration passe par le commerce. Et le commerce intra-africain doit aller au-delà des 18% affichés à ce jour. Je travaillerai à la levée des barrières non tarifaires et faciliter la libre circulation des biens et des personnes. La place de l'Afrique sur la scène internationale sera l'une de mes priorités. Je serai la voix écoutée de l'Afrique à travers le monde. La transformation de notre continent se fera avec notre jeunesse et nos femmes et notre diaspora par les moyens du savoir, des techniques et des technologies en agriculture, en industrie et dans les services. L'Afrique que nous voulons, mesdames et messieurs, est l'Afrique de la paix, de l'intégration et de la prospérité, passe d'abord par la volonté politique des États, par la solidarité agissante africaine et grâce à l'adhésion de nos peuples. Devant vous ce soir, devant des millions d'Africains, je prends l'engagement d'assumer la responsabilité qui me sera confiée si je suis élu pour faire en sorte que notre continent brille sur la scène internationale et je vous remercie.
Thank you, Your Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite His Excellency Raila Odinga to share his opening remarks. Your Excellency, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Your Excellency Ambassador Konjit, my co-panelists here, His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, and His Excellency Mr. Richard, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, Africa. Africa, hamjambo, bonsoir. Salam alaikum, rahmatullah ta'ala wa barakatuh. Boa noite. I am delighted to have opportunity today to stand before you as the son of Africa. I was born in Kenya, but I'm told that my grandparents came from the Sudan. I am a father of 4, a grandfather of 5, and a husband of 1 that I know of. I am an engineer by profession, and I have been an academic. I have also been a public servant. I've been a member of parliament. I've also been a prime minister and also leader of opposition. In those capacities, I've tried to do my best, and I've gained a lot of experience in terms of management of public affairs. I stand here as an Pan-Africanist and an Afro-optimist. 2 months ago, that is on the 21st of October, this year we were here in Addis Ababa. We had been invited as members of the families of the founding fathers of the African Union to come and witness the reopening of the Africa Hall. That's the hall where the OAU was launched in 1963. And we're happy to be here with Madam Ambassador Konjit, who was there as a young girl at that time. It is now 61 years since the launch of the Organization of African Unity. And at that time, if you read the speeches of the founding fathers on that day, they were very passionate, and all of them talked about African unity. Where there was a difference was, when do we achieve this unity? There are those who, under the school of thought, that the unity now. And those who said, no, we need to be gradual in this. Let us first build the building blocks, the regional unions, which will eventually translate into formation of the African Union as a whole. But now we have they came up 50 years later with Vision 2063, which now hopes to get Africa united, one union government by 2030, and move on to attain the vision, the wishes of the founding fathers of Africa. I say that I have the experience. I've been part of this movement for changing the continent. We know that some achievements have been made. Africa is now completely liberated, but there's still work to do. And I believe that I have what it takes to get us where we want to do. In the field of education, in the field of health, in the field of value addition to the abundant wealth that we have on the continent, in the field of trade, inter-African trade. I have acted as the African Union High Representative on Infrastructure. And in this I know that we have very comprehensive programs in PIDA, Program for Infrastructure Development of the Continent. What remains is action. And what I want to promise the African people is that I am going to lead from the front to ensure that we achieve the visions of the founding fathers of our continent. I thank you.
Merci infiniment au candidat du Kenya, Excellence Monsieur Raila Amolo Odinga. Et maintenant, Mesdames et Messieurs, présentation de Son Excellence Monsieur Richard Randriaman Drato de Madagascar.
Excellences et chers invités pour cette session importante pour l'Afrique. Comme vous voyez, nous sommes 3 candidats et non 2 candidats, comme ce qu'on voit dans les réseaux sociaux. Et nous nous présentons devant vous aujourd'hui pour vous convaincre du sérieux que nous apportons au travail qui est attendu du prochain président de la Commission de l'Union africaine. Alors qui suis-je? Je suis un parmi 1,3 milliard d'Africains. Tout comme vous, j'ai commencé à la base. J'ai été un jeune consultant, j'ai été un enquêteur dans la microfinance. J'ai fait le tour de plusieurs capitales en Afrique, presque 41 pays dans les années 89. Tout comme vous, j'ai eu du mal à trouver du travail. Mais j'ai trouvé, très modestement, ce qui était à la mesure de mes capacités. Tout comme vous, j'ai bâti ma carrière sur ma conviction que tout citoyen est capable de survivre par lui-même. Et tout comme vous, aujourd'hui, je suis devant vous parce que je pense avoir d'abord la confiance de mon président, M. Ange Radzoel,
the President of Madagascar, and I am proud. I am proud that I was actually supported by my country, just like you. I've actually come a long way, and I have actually gotten to this level where I have the trust of my government. I was Minister of the Economy in my country because that is my specialty. I was also Minister of Foreign Affairs, and I'm here today standing before you to talk about Africa. Africa is actually the second dynamic economic region in the world, and is actually making progress. And things are changing in our favor. And recently I read about the funding of the African Development Bank, funding several projects in Africa. And this is quite promising for the continent. The World Bank also has increased its envelope, funding 75 countries, 75 less developed countries. And I also think that we have funding for small states. Small states, that's not a pejorative term, but there is an idea that I want to share with you. Africa is moving. Is first of all the states that are actually seeing a 3.4% economic growth per year. But I think we should do more than that. And then we have our own house. Here we are, the African Union, which is our home. And what I have noticed is that there is an Africa which is actually moving forward, which is a dynamic Africa, and then there is the African Union, which doesn't really have the capacity for it to move forward. I am here before you today because I think it is indispensable and it is a must that those who want to have the quality, competence, conviction, of course, today, I think that I have those qualities, and I hope that I've been able to convince you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Richard Randyamandrato from Madagascar. And now, ladies and gentlemen, this officially brings us to the beginning of our debate, where we move into the first round of questions. But before then, allow us to reiterate the rules and the guidelines for you, our esteemed candidates. You each have 4 minutes to answer the questions that will be posed, and you will each answer the absolute same question. Your Excellencies, with respect and humility, if you surpass the 4-minute mark, myself or my colleague will have to interrupt your response. And this eventually brings us to this moment, ladies and gentlemen, where my colleague and I will open the envelope for the first round of questions.
Thank you, Anita. Merci
thank you very much, Anita, and thank you very much to our candidates who have just introduced themselves to yourselves, members of this public. As my sister has just reminded us, we are going to open, ladies and gentlemen, the first round of questions. We are going to remind all of us that the questions were drafted in English and in French. They were drafted by an independent panel. The envelopes were handed over to us a few minutes ago by Her Excellency Madam Konjit Sine Georges. And immediately with Anita, we're going to select an envelope. Anita, you're going to ask the first question.
Esteemed candidates, your question in English, and after that my colleague here, Fatima, will translate in French. Translating Africa's natural wealth into continental prosperity. Africa has everything it needs to feed her people, educate her children, and take care of her health. Yet, the reality defies this. How will you turn the continent's resource wealth into tangible benefits, reducing debt, ensuring sustainable financing for the African Union, and enabling Africa to control its destiny economically. Also, how will you ensure that the African Continental Free Trade Area achieves its goals?
Excellences, messieurs les candidats, la question en langue française. L'Afrique a tout ce dont elle a besoin pour nourrir sa population, éduquer ses enfants et prendre soin de leur santé. Mais la réalité défie cela. Comment allez-vous transformer la richesse en ressources du continent en avantages tangibles, réduire la dette, assurer un financement durable pour l'Union africaine et permettre à l'Afrique de contrôler son destin économique? En outre, comment allez-vous garantir que la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine atteigne ses objectifs? Et on commence avec le premier candidat de Madagascar. Excellence, vous avez 4 minutes pour y répondre.
This question talks about the hopes, and the first hope is that is contained in Agenda 2063, and we are going to just try and respond to this question. Perhaps not answer it completely, because you can't answer it in just 4 minutes. You can't show academically what it is that we can do in order to respond to this aspiration. So aspiration 1 of Agenda 2063 is growth and sustainable development. Your question is huge. How can a chairperson of the African Union Commission, with a very clear terms of responsibility, about 26 of those, and first of all, he or she has to demonstrate leadership characteristics, has to have administrative capacity, has to know protocol, has to be diplomatic. How can such a chairperson respond to such a huge question? I am an economist. I am a finance person by training. I do have some ideas to share. First of all, I can emphasize the importance of continuing to develop the economy at the continental level. You did mention our joint initiative about developing trade through, in theory, liberalization of trade, liberalization of the circulation of persons throughout our continent. In theory, I say trade can effectively become a source of economic dynamism. I think I understand that we're at about 12.6% of commercial trade between African countries. This is very low. For a continent such as Europe, a continent such as America, they go up to more than 50%. So what we need to do is to continue to continue with the efforts that we're doing. There's already a secretariat, the ICFTA. A secretariat, the ICFTA is just a geographical. It's zone. It is the geographical zone. We haven't yet attained this free circulation of trade, but if we manage to ensure that a free trade can happen, and can happen very quickly, it is very possible that we shall triple our performance in economic development. I am a farmer. I have a fish and chickens, and at a very small scale, and I support young farmers. And it's very difficult to pretend that one can have a good quality and one can sell the products to the neighbors. People are not able to really exhaust what is available in the market. But free trade is that. It is to learn how to master capital virtues, capitalism. Where do you find money, and what am I going to do to find the money? I think we need to start modestly. We need to start at the level of the local development, so that slowly by slowly, with support from the government and of course the support of the African Union, we shall then at the end ensure that all of the citizens, young, medium-aged, and especially women, can have the opportunity of participating in this large continental market. Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
You, Excellency Raila Odinga. First for your answer. 4 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Africa is, of course, the least developed continent by comparison. Look at economic statistics. But this is because there are historical statistics. But this is because there are historical reasons why Africa is where it is today. And we say that Africa does not need to remain here. We need to develop Africa. There are several factors which work against Africa. For example, the international financial infrastructure has worked very much against Africa, because African countries have been made to borrow money at a very high rate of interest compared to other countries of the same status as the African countries. So we need to address the issue of rearranging the international financial infrastructure. That is, I think, one of the major starting points. Now, Africa is the richest continent on the planet Earth in terms of raw materials. But it's a paradox that Africa also is the poorest in terms of living conditions. You say that we need not to remain for perpetually the source of raw materials for industrial west or east, that we need to do value addition to raw materials which are coming out of Africa before we export them. And then we've also said that Africa needs to trade more with itself. There's big potential. Like the African Development Bank today says that 7 out of the 20 fastest growing economies in this year are going to be African countries. That are much higher than Europe. We're only competing with Asia. So it is important that Africa enhances the trade with itself. The inter-African trade today stands at just mere 15%. Now we have the African Free Trade Area organization that was launched now 3 years ago, but not much has been achieved. Some of the reasons are issues that are actually solvable. The non-tariff barriers to trade that have been imposed by respective African countries. Things like standards, which are different from one country to the other country, making it difficult for goods to move freely across the borders. Then modalities of payment. And then it's the other issue of infrastructure. I worked for 5 years as the African Union High Representative on Infrastructure Development. And here is another problem, because goods cannot move freely because of lack of adequate infrastructure within the continent. Kenya exported tea to Ghana, and it took 3 months of tea to travel from Kenya to Ghana. We have major infrastructure projects, the high-speed continental railway, the inter-African highways, Cape to Cairo, Tunis to Cape, Dakar to Djibouti, Dakar, Lagos, Mombasa, and so on and so forth. All these need to be developed. Energy is another factor. Energy is too expensive, but we can reduce the cost of energy and go green in the continent.
Thank you so much, Excellency. Candidate from Kenya. Et à présent, mesdames et messieurs, la réponse de son Excellence, le candidat du Djibouti.
Quand on parle
think about natural resources. And the riches of Africa begins with its people. We have 1.4 billion inhabitants on the continent, and more than 60% of this population is young, between 0 and 25 years. The first wealth of this continent is in its people. We must have the capacity to think about how we can ensure that these people, this population, can benefit not only from the existing wealth, but also add value to that wealth. How can we go about that? Through universal education, quality education in our countries. We should have the capacity of offering our citizens a free education from the primary to the university levels, and ensure that this education is spread in all of the regions of our continent and of our country. We must remove the obstacles to education. The feminine population represents 50.2%. There are still cultural obstacles. There are obstacles to the education of girls. We must concentrate on valorizing our human resources. And then we have fertile land. What are we doing with this fertile land? We are still in many countries using very archaic agriculture. It is time to begin to develop an agriculture that I would call modern. It does exist in many countries. Look, for example, at a country such as Rwanda. Tea and coffee are actually, there's value added locally. Countries such as Ghana, countries such as Cote d'Ivoire, cocoa is transformed locally. Now, these raw products that we sell without adding value, we must be able to add value locally so that we can increase the wealth and also create employment. The transformation of agricultural products is a priority. So today, agriculture in many countries uses biotechnology. It uses the drip system. It uses seeds that are modified, that are quality seeds. Ethiopia uses quality seeds in order to be able to produce maize. Today, Ethiopia produces maize and wheat because of these seeds that are quality seeds. It is important to think about transforming agricultural product in place that will ensure that the people can get out of food insecurity, ensure that there is a specialized agriculture. There has to be areas of specialized agriculture, and that, I would say, is one of the steps that will lead to ensuring that this wealth can be at the benefit of the population. And then we come to natural resources. I acknowledge the work by President Museveni. He has said that he will not export petrol or gas as long as there will not be a refinery in Uganda. These are the examples from African leaders who take the destiny of their people in hand so that they can actually have value added locally. Now, trade, everybody knows that it is through trade that development happens. Look at China. China and all over the Chinese economy really target production and exportation. When you add value to our products, we can become exporters. Let me talk about tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers. That is not the problem. I think that the situation must be to, first of all, protect our wealth by transforming them locally. Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf.
Of round one, where I'm happy to announce we have a 5-minute break, and after this break we come to round two. You have been tuned in to us here from the African Union headquarters here in Addis Ababa, and we are bringing to you Njadala Africa Leadership Debate 2024 with our 3 esteemed candidates vying for the position of chairperson of the African Union.
Merci infiniment, cher candidat.
Thank you very much, candidates, for having answered to the first question of the first round. Ladies and gentlemen, there's still 3 rounds to go in which you will all participate, and we're going to take a break of 5 minutes. We'll come back immediately after. Thank you very much for having listened to us. Thank you.
I'll have the usual on the rocks, double.
Your profile says you don't drink.
Oh, and I missed out on the silky refreshing test?
For real? For real. Well, in that case, I'll have whatever he's having.
I drink responsibly. Knock knock.
Who's there?
Del.
Del who?
Del Monte.
Real recognize real. No added sugar, no preservatives. 100% real fruit.
The present and future of a prosperous country rests on steel. Devkey Steel Mills, state-of-the-art factory, produces durable steel purely from iron ore. The Devkey Next Generation TMT Bars BS Grade 600 MPa is at the core of skyscrapers, bungalows, bridges. Why compromise on safety on your long-term investments? Insist on Devkey Next Generation TMT Bars BS Grade 600 MPa, the first of its kind in Kenya with extra strength. Devkey Steel Mills, proudly Kenyan.
Tarehe 4 on 4th hadi tarehe 15
up to 15th of December.
Mwezi wa 12. Mungu anatupa nguvu kupitia kwa damu na mwili wa mwanawe.
Furahia Christmas kila wiki na deals kibao. With festive discounts, jolly deals, holiday treats, cheerful bargains, merry offers. Furahia Christmas kila wiki na Carrefour.
Did you know there is an Mpox outbreak in Kenya and the region? It's therefore crucial for the general public to take precautions. Mpox is a viral disease transmitted through direct contact with infected persons, including with their body fluids, contaminated personal items such as clothing, utensils, or through sexual contact. The signs: skin rashes or lesions which can last 2 to 4 weeks, fever, headaches, muscle aches, fatigue, and swollen lymph nodes. If you notice these, don't wait. Seek medical advice immediately. Mpox spreads fast through close contact like skin-to-skin, face-to-face conversations, kissing, or even contact with contaminated items like bedding or clothing. Everyone is at risk. Healthcare workers, travelers, pregnant women, and those with weaker immune systems are at higher risk. Protect yourself now. Avoid close contact with infected individuals, stay clear of contaminated materials, and keep your surroundings clean. Following health guidelines can help you stay safe. If you suspect that you or someone close to you might have Mpox, act fast. Contact or go to the nearest health center or call the Ministry of Health hotline at 719 or dial 0729 471414 or 0732 353 535. For more information, visit the Ministry of Health website www.health.go.ke. Stay informed, stay protected. This message is brought to you by the Ministry of Health, UNICEF, and other partners.
Skia, niju, si. Flavor zote tamu tena fruity. Yummy, na flow kama maji, juu ni tamu kama sali. Niju, si. Are you bored? Kuna vitu zinakuudhi, usijali my bro, hebu kama taka juicy juni.
Chrissy itadonjo na Royco. Ukisema pilau ama mchuzi rojo, wet and dry fry hadi nyama choma, hata ukitaka ugali greens na new chili cube pia itabamba. Zote zitadonjo ukieka Royco. Onjo uamini Chrissy itadonjo.
Furahia Christmas kila wiki na deals kibao. With festive discounts, jolly deals, holiday treats, cheerful bargains, merry offers. Furahia Christmas kila wiki na Carrefour.
Get the Premier League in your pocket now for even less with Showmax and Safaricom, where you can now get Showmax Premier League Mobile plus 3 gigs of data for only 450 shillings.
Great opportunity.
Just dial *544*37#.
What they're seeing.
It's your stadium on the move at the greatest price ever. Just dial *544*37#. Only with Showmax and Safaricom. T's and C's apply.
Wasikiliza wote vile wamejieleza. Ukiangalia Mahmud na Raila.
Monsieur Mahamadou Ali Youssouf, ministre des Affaires étrangères du Djibouti. Excellence, Monsieur Raila Amolo Odinga, ancien Premier ministre du Kenya. Enfin, Excellence, Monsieur Richard Randriamandrato, ancien ministre des Affaires étrangères de Madagascar. Et on revient tout de suite pour le deuxième round, Anita.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're very welcome back. We are about to start the round 2 of our deep leadership debate, where we are witnessing and listening to 3 esteemed candidates, each vying for the chairperson position of the African Union Commission. Earlier on, we heard their thoughts on issues such as the African Continental Free Trade Area, and now we're moving into the second round. And if you're just joining us, we're beaming live from the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, to be specific.
Et pour ouvrir le deuxième round, mesdames et messieurs, honorables assistances, nous allons également ouvrir une deuxième enveloppe pour découvrir la question qui a été préparée par le panel. Dans les deux langues, la langue française, ensuite la langue anglaise. Alors, Excellence, chers candidats, votre question est la suivante. Malgré l'aspiration de l'Union africaine à faire taire les armes d'ici 2030, les conflits persistent. Comment comptez-vous favoriser des solutions africaines pour assurer une prévention, une gestion et une résolution efficace et durable des conflits? Et comment comptez-vous accélérer la poussée de l'Afrique vers un siège permanent au Conseil de sécurité des Nations Unies?
Your question, dear candidates. EU's aspiration to silence guns by 2020, conflicts persist. How will you foster African solutions to ensure effective and durable conflict prevention, management, and resolution? And how do you plan to accelerate Africa's push for a permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council? Ladies and gentlemen, our esteemed candidates, the first to answer this round of questions will be His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga. You have 4 minutes, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. Well, silencing the guns on the continent. As you know that in 2013, the EU met and passed a resolution to silence the guns by 2020. We are today in 2024, and the guns are not silent. They're very loud, roaring all over the continent. The thing is, we need to address the causative factors of these conflicts. There are some which are conflict caused by poverty or deprivation. Some of them by conflict within the society, again, things like ethnicity and so on. Some of them are externally influenced or promoted. Some are religious and so on. So there's not a common factor. But what you need to do is to address the causative factors which could translate into these conflicts throughout the continent. And this is what I will do myself. First, as you know that our African countries are not at the same levels of development. Those which are more developed, like for example, in terms of governance, there are some areas where you have got exclusions of people, and as a result of this, there's some people move to use other means. We need to find a way of creating an environment of dialogue within our societies so that we can be able to prevent these differences, conflict ending up into violent confrontation between the various groups. We don't need to put a time span, but I'm sure that it is possible to end these conflicts and stop the guns by 2020. 35, in my view. The other one is the issue of Africa's representation on the Security Council. This is something that's been long overdue. As you know, that the UN was formed at a time when most parts of Africa were colonies. And that's why the UN structure as today does not deal with the realities of the world today. And the situation where you have 5 countries sitting in the Security Council with veto powers, and Africa is not represented, a continent with 1.4 billion people, is not tenable and it's not accessible. And that's why I'm not going to talk about Africa's representation, but we're going to insist that Africa must get 2 permanent seats in the UN Security Council. This is only fair, because we are a continent of 55 sovereign nations. We cannot be excluded when Europe has got 3 permanent representations on the Security Council. Permanent representation with the veto powers is a must for Africa. And this I'm going to insist when I'm elected, if the heads of state of Africa sees fit that I should lead this. I will work together with all the leadership of the continent to ensure that the continent gets a fair treatment on the international scene.
Thank you so much, Excellency. Candidate from Kenya. Et maintenant, mesdames et messieurs, la réponse de son Excellence, le candidat.
His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf.
Silencing the Guns is a flagship program, one of the 15 that our leaders have endorsed years ago. And then they put a number of mechanisms and structure around this flagship program so that peace becomes a reality on our continent. The first structure is the African Peace and Security Architecture. And then we have the strategy that we all know, Silencing the Guns. And to support this strategy, the African Union put in place a number of mechanisms. One of them is the Peace and Security Council. The other one is the Committee of Elders, the Committee of Chief of Staff. We have the Peace Fund, and we can rely on every kind of mechanism. So why is peace is not, let's say, a reality on the ground on our continent? There are a number of reasons. One of them is the political will of countries. We have to be outspoken and frank. We make decisions at the Peace and Security Council level. These decisions are not implemented. Our Peace and Security Council is not proactive. It is reacting to crises when they occur and happen. This has to change. And I'm sending a message to our member countries saying this has to change. The number 2 problem that we have to face is our standby forces. We have them on the papers. Of course, sometimes we can mobilize them, but they lack resources. We are still relying on foreign partnership for our resources. Let me give you is our standby forces. We have them on the papers. Of course, sometimes we can mobilize them, but they lack resources. We are still relying on foreign partnership for our resources. Let me give you an example. AMISOM. Since 2007, ATMIS has been financed by the European Union and the United Nations up to 2.7 billion euros. Now, financial resources are critical. Why should we have the money so that we can operate on crisis ground on the continent? Because without money, we cannot deploy our standby forces. Without money, even the committee of mediators cannot go and discuss with the stakeholders. They sometimes wait for the tickets, the per diems, days and days and days. It's very critical that the Peace Fund, in which we have $400 million, that the Commission and the PRC, get to the compromise situation where that money could be used for peace on the continent. So far, only the interest of the 400 millions are used. And I'm really shameful When I say, DRC have been given 1 million for peace, issues through this fund. And they have given to, I don't know, another country 1.5 million. It has to change. We need the authority from the member countries so that we can use this money, the $400 million, to keep peace on our continent. There are so many other bottlenecks that needs to be handled very quickly. But money is one of them. The Peace and Security Council mission is the second problem. And then we have a third one. This one also has to be underlined very, very seriously. When a crisis happens, I give you the example of Somalia. I've been around for some time. I've been dealing with this problem for many years. When there is no unity of purpose between the countries around this country, neighboring countries, this country will never stand on its feet. That's what we are experiencing today in the Sudan. Hundreds of thousands of people have been killed, millions displaced. Neighboring countries are still fighting on the Sudan, and the African Union and IGAD are watching.
Sorry, sir, your time is up.
Okay, sorry, because I can talk hours about this issue.
No problem, sir. Thank you so much. Respond to the question. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Silencing the guns and issues relating to peace and security in general actually are due to so many things. It's not like turning on a switch or switching it off, not on and off a switch. No, there are several factors that have to be taken into consideration, and that is the reason why the African continent and the African Union have been challenges to silence the guns. But we have to resolve our conflicts peacefully, and this is one of the principles of the African Union, just like the principle of non-interference. So this is an aspect that we all have to actually look at. When exactly do we talk about non-interference, non-indifference, and how do we use them to silence the guns? But that is the situation in which we find ourselves in. And if I am chosen by the heads of state and government as chairperson of the commission, I will make sure that the African Union Commission would actually work towards resolving our conflicts peacefully, because we have that in the Constitutive Act of Africa, of the African Union. So we have the Peace and Security Council, we have the Peace Architecture of the African Union, but we also have the United Nations Security Council. And then bilaterally, we've got efforts that are underway, and we've heard about progress in some areas, in some regions where we have long-standing conflicts. And then we also have the opportunity of ensuring that there is solidarity with the United Nations, the African Union and the United Nations. This is a framework that would actually enable us to sit down with the international community and talk about crisis in Africa. Why should we only talk about the crisis in Ukraine? Why not talk about the crisis in Sudan and crisis in other African countries? So we are talking about financing peace missions, but there is also a program that actually wants to see the program of the United Nations, that is the SDGs, aligned with Agenda 2063. And then we also have the 10-year plan of our public institutions in charge of working at a national level, but we are talking about the justice systems in our respective countries. Now, concerning the two permanent seats on the United Nations Security Council, I think here in Africa we all know the importance and the urgency of having these two seats, and we have to seize this opportunity because we are actually at the end of 2024, and so we have to act very fast in 2025, and this should be the mantra of the African Union in 2025, and so of course we have to make sure that we can actually speak with one voice on the choice of who will represent Africa on the United Nations Security Council. It's not going to be easy. It will be up to the heads of states to decide who will be the continent's representative. And I will conclude to say that, like this morning, I read in the newspapers the issue, the problem between Ethiopia and Somalia, and this was being resolved by Turkey. The mediator is Turkey. Let us be responsible. Let us be serious. The African Union should be that person doing the mediation. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Au candidat de Madagascar, mesdames et messieurs, ainsi s'achève le deuxième round et nous allons tout de suite et sans transition aucune passer au troisième round et nous allons tout de suite découvrir la question. Anita, à vous l'honneur.
Thank you very much, Fatima. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we move into the third round. Once again, if you're just joining us, these questions have been formulated by an independent panel, and the questions will be open and seen only at the beginning of the round, as I'm doing right now. Esteemed candidates, on the topic of reviving Pan-Africanism and countering external influence, Pan-Africanism is declining, and external powers and internal divisions challenge Africa's integration efforts. What specific steps will you take to rekindle the spirit of Pan-Africanism, counter big power politics on the continent, mobilize African countries behind a common integration agenda, ensure resource self-reliance, and position regional economic communities at the center of this process?
Cher candidat, votre question est la suivante. Et les puissances extérieures et les divisions internes remettent en cause les efforts d'intégration en Afrique. Quelles mesures spécifiques comptez-vous prendre pour raviver l'esprit du panafricanisme contre la politique des grandes puissances sur le continent, mobiliser les pays africains derrière un programme d'intégration commun, assurer l'autonomie en matière de ressources et positionner également les communautés économiques régionales au centre de ce processus. Et nous allons commencer tout de suite avec le candidat de Djibouti pour y répondre. Vous avez également 4 minutes, monsieur.
D'abord, il faut comprendre que nous
First and foremost, we have to understand that we are living in a world which is multipolarized world. This is a world that is actually multipolarized, and this world would not provide space for a continent or countries that do not have the right economies, the military strength, the capacity that is required, and mostly that continent or country that is not on the world stage. This is a reality. So what can we do? What should we do? I think it is very important that the Global South should actually take action. And in the Global South, it is Africa that actually has to stand out. And how is Africa going to stand out? If we do not represent much in terms of global trade, you cannot actually sit around a table where decisions are being taken for the destiny of the world. And so integration is, I would say, an obligation is a must. When we talk about obligation, it is important that the AFCFTA should actually be functional. It is important that intra-Africa trade be developed, and it should go beyond 18%. It is important that African countries should actually use their own resources. And so Africa has now a seat and the G20 table. We want to congratulate South Africa for chairing the G20 next year. And so it is important that the African Union Commission should be working hand in hand with the African Union to actually make sure that Agenda 2063 is a priority item on the agenda of Agenda 2063 of the G20. Africa has to be also on the UN Security Council. Just imagine 80% of the issues discussed at the UN Security Council is African problems. When we talk about security issues, who Who do we talk about? Africa. We have, when we talk about food insecurity, we also hear Africa, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Ethiopia, Kenya, Somalia. They have actually been victims of natural disasters, but we are not the ones polluting the world. So the African Union should also be fully involved in the COP discussions. The COP discussions should also be held here in Africa. So a strong Africa has to be an Africa that is present on the global stage. We have to see that Africa has to be part and parcel of the global south, and this is what we have to do. And I'm going to make sure that our commission is going to work to ensure that Africa is part of the global south. Integration is a long-winded effort. It goes through solidarity. We are not working among ourselves. We are not speaking to one another as neighbors. Would rather trade with non-African countries because we have non-tariff barriers, because our currencies are not convertible. Our currencies are not convertible. If I want to trade in birr with Ethiopia, and Ethiopia wants to trade in francs, definitely there is loss of money. So we should have a payment and compensation system in Africa. We have to mobilize resources between 5 and 10 billion so that this compensation system is functional. Are we going to have a single currency in Africa? Why not? That is possible.
Now I give the floor to Excellency Randia Mandrato. It's your turn, sir. 4 minutes.
Well, I do not think that Pan-Africanism is actually dying out. No, because Pan-Africanism is in us. We are Pan-Africanists. You cannot erase the history of this continent, the history which also includes the efforts of our diaspora. So, Pan-Africanism Pan-Africanism is really not dying in Africa. It is true that we all have a huge responsibility. The current generation that we have to work to make sure that the future generation should not forget what our founding fathers actually had in mind when they were establishing the OAU. So that all those who are in Africa should continue to live the same dream the same dream. We inherited this continent from our founding fathers, and we have the Africa that we want. The Africa that we see is the Africa where we live in, and the Africa that we want is the Africa that we want to prepare and which we must prepare. And so there is a clear difference between the Africa in which we are and the African Union, which is our own home, the common house. And if the African Union Commission does not put in the right resources, the human resources and the financial resources, even the diplomats and the military, we will not get to where we want to be. And so I am of the opinion that it all depends on the will of the people to go beyond the challenges that we face today. We all know the problems of our African Union today. There are certain aspects that do not meet the expectations of the people. For example, the SACA audit that was prepared by experts proposing reforms that have to be undertaken. We also have reforms that were undertaken in 2016. So we need to undertake those reforms to ensure that the African Union can actually rise to the challenges. The regional economic communities also have a role to play. I went to COMESA for several years and actually saw the efforts undertaken by countries of COMESA and East Africa. And we see Tunisia, Egypt in COMESA as well. Egypt in COMESA as well. And this will continue. We have the Abuja Treaty actually defined gradual integration at the regional level and then the continental level. And I know we will get there. And I am going to work with the members of
the next commission, so that together we can actually make all of this easy. And lastly, I think we should also bear in mind, we should also think about the military bases, the foreign military bases in Africa, in African countries. Some countries have already started to take their own destiny in their hands in terms of their security. We should be brave enough. We should actually have that courage to make sure that we can actually stand out there as adults that can actually take their destiny in their own hands. Foreign military bases in Africa, we do hope that in a few years' time, those military bases will be a thing of the past, because this military base is actually a source of conflict. Thank you. Thank you very much, Excellency Randram Mandriato, candidate of Madagascar. Now we listen to Raila Amolo Odinga, candidate of Kenya.
Thank you. Well, I mentioned earlier on about the inter-African trade, which today stands just at 15%. Inter-European trade, on the other hand, stands at 70%. Inter-Asian trade stands at 60%. Africa trades more with the external world than with itself, wasting a lot of resources. Now, how did Europeans come from behind and leapfrog and overtake Africa? That is something that we need to ask ourselves. But here, we need to now look forward to see how we can be able to make use of this huge domestic market that we have. We have a population of 1.4 billion people. And that is what has helped China. China did two things. One was to train the younger generation, the youth, so that they had a very highly skilled manpower. And when they liberalized their economy, the manufacturing unit in the West rushed to China. If you go to China, for example, take the automobile, the Ford, the Jeep, the BMW, the Mercedes, the Toyota, the Nissan, they're all there in China. And because there was cheap, highly skilled, cheap labor. Secondly, cheap raw material. The raw materials which they were actually getting originally from Africa. And that is how China has managed to develop a 600 million people middle class. Africa can be able to fill the gap which is being left down there by China by actually coming together and opening up. So we need to come together as Africa and create an African market which will be able to attract investors to come to our continent. Africa is the youngest continent in terms of population. 70% of our population is below the age of 35. That is a big bonus. It can be a bonus or it can be a curse. If the youth are not empowered, given requisite knowledge and skills, they become a drug to society, drunkards, drug addicts, and criminals. But empowered, they become a real source for wealth creation. It is a pity today that many African youths drown in the Mediterranean trying to seek greener pastures in Europe because you have not created conditions that can retain them here. Now we are saying that we want to create a situation where every African youth must be connected to the internet, and using the artificial intelligence and information technology, we can be able to give this youth opportunity to work anywhere in the world when they're staying here on the continent. This is something that we are going to address, empowerment of the African youth, and together with the African woman, so that we create a workforce that will be helped in terms of wealth creation on the continent. This will enable Africa to leapfrog and to catch up with the rest of the world. I'm saying that I want to be a vehicle to be used to help Africa to get there. We will work together with all the leadership in the continent so that Africa moves.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you very much, Your Excellency Raila Odinga, finishing us on the third round. And now we move into the fourth and final round, and I give my sister the opportunity to open the envelope and tell us what the first or the last question rather is. Ladies and gentlemen, as a form of a reminder, after this we have a quick break, and after the break each of our esteemed candidates will have 2 minutes to share their closing remarks. Fatima?
Dear candidates, your question is this one. The implementation of the key reforms at the African Union that were decided by the Assembly of Heads of State and Government has come to a standstill, and which has a negative impact on the structural stability and the financial viability of the Union, and also on the lack of the African Union to have an impact. Were you to become the chairperson, what new approaches would you adopt to reinvigorate the implementation of these reforms, rationalize the programs of the African Union, and strengthen its effectiveness in the long term?
Under the topic of implementing of reforms agreed under the Assembly Decision 635, the implementation of key African Union reforms decided by the Assembly of Heads of States and Governments has stalled, with an adverse impact on its structural viability and financial sustainability, and the AU's focus on a few high-impact public goods. If you become chairperson, what new approaches will you introduce to reinvigorate the implementation of these reforms, streamline the AU's agenda, and strengthen its long-term effectiveness?
Et j'invite à présent le candidat.
I'd like to invite the candidate from Madagascar to respond first. First of all, we have to begin by bringing back order to our shared home at the African Union. I think this is the highest priority. The mandate of the chairperson of the commission as a whole is last 4 years. That is a very short period of time to be able to change from top to bottom what needs to be changed in terms of institutional reforms of the African Union. So one must begin by bringing back order. I did mention a short while ago the recommendations of the SACA audit. I also mentioned the reforms that have already been proposed in 2016. There would be other reforms. What needs to be done were I to become the chairperson of the union would be to review the documents, and one cannot forget history. One cannot ignore history. I don't think we could. We are at the end of a process. We are at the beginning of a new process, and the outgoing team did what they were able to do with the resources that they had at their disposal. And I would like to thank the outgoing chairperson of the commission, Mr. Faki, and his entire team. And were I to be elected chairperson of the commission, I would work, of course, with the chairperson, because it would be a lady chairperson. Now, these reforms have to be prioritized. There are reforms at the level of the financing of the African Union. There are reforms in terms of mobilization of strategic partnerships. There are, of course, issues that have to do with the effectiveness in the area of peace and security. So we have to prioritize the reforms. Yet, once again, 4 years is too short a period of time. It is therefore important to review objective by objective. Strategic objective is what I mean of the 10-year plan 2024-2032. And since it was my responsibility in COMESA, one can perhaps plan for strategic planning over perhaps 2-3 years, which strategic planning would make it possible for us to identify the urgent urgent issues and to align the financing of these issues. The 10-year plan does not allow one to do this. And maybe were we to have a strategic plan, we could perhaps be more specific and address the matters that need to be addressed urgently in the way of reforms. And I also think, as I said a short while ago, that the organs of the African Union, beginning with the Conference of Heads of State and Government, but also the committee of the PRC, the Permanent Representatives Committee with the Pan-African Parliament and the other organs, all the organs of the African Union should agree on the speed they should work at, so that at the end of the day, the reforms become visible, become tangible, and that the citizens of the continent can appreciate the effectiveness of a new the effectiveness of the new African Union led by a new team. Thank you.
And now I yield the microphone to you, Excellency Raila Odinga. 4 minutes, sir.
Well, we know where we are as African Union, and that's why the heads of state came up with that committee on reforms, which was headed by former president, current Rwanda President Kagame. The chairmanship has now been passed over to Honorable William Ruto, President of Kenya. I have had long discussions with President Kagame when he was chairing that committee, because I was working as a high representative of the AU on issues of infrastructure. And I know the kind of frustrations that you feel working that way. I know that 93% of the resolutions that are passed by the heads of state at the assembly are never implemented. Now, there's some of them are resolutions which were probably not necessary. Some of them are not implementable, but majority of them are just not implemented. Some have to do with the structure and management of the AU at the headquarters. I'm not trying to pass any judgment here because I know that Mr. Paki has worked very hard to try to make the organization move forward. The other one has been the issue of funding, which has been a major challenge, and look at other alternative sources of funding. When I was there as high rep on infrastructure development, we came up with a proposal to set up an infrastructure fund for Africa, and using the African resources, because many of African countries have got a lot of money in sovereign funds, from which the AU can actually borrow without having to pay so much high interest. And this will help AU actually to spearhead the process of constructing some of these infrastructures. I mentioned the Trans-African Railway network, Lagos to Cairo, the high speed. Then you have got Beira in Mozambique to Lobito in Angola and Walvis Bay in Namibia. Then you have got the LAPSET, which will come from Lamu in Kenya, running through South Sudan, Central Africa to Karibi in Cameroon, to create a land bridge that opens the interior of Africa and gives these landlocked countries in the continent access to the sea. So some of these are possible, but we need to think out of the box and ensure that most of these reforms which are being proposed are implemented. We were talking about energy, which is a very major issue. And we have got the Grand Inga in the Congo, which can actually power the entire continent with power pools, southern power pool, eastern power pool, central, western, and northern power pool. That will help us to lower the cost of energy in the continent. That would be a revolutionary change on the continent. Then you've got the connectivity, fiber optic connectivity, open skies. opening up the skies for movement of people, and then visas. To do with visas is a big issue. Many African businessmen cannot travel across the continent because they don't have visas.
Excellency, I'm really sorry to interrupt you. Les 4 minutes se sont écoulées. Nous allons maintenant suivre.
We are going now to listen to the response from the last candidate for this round, the candidate from Djibouti.
Let me start by paying tribute to our heads of states who have endorsed those reforms in 2017. And then the champion for those reforms was His Excellency President Kagame, and he passed the responsibility to President Ruto. Now, there are a number of reforms that have already been implemented. We have to recognize that. The size of the commission, we had 10 commissioners, chairperson, deputy chairperson, and 8 commissioners, and it has been reduced. We have what we call a golden rule in terms of managing the staff and the personnel. I'm still waiting for the SACA program to be implemented. I hope that this hot potato will not wait for us, one of us, when we'll be elected. But I hope that the SACA process will be implemented. It is about the personnel, the staff. We have moved from a lot of short contract employees to a permanent contract. That's very important. If you want to create loyalty, you want to create the ownership within your staff and personnel, you have to make them happy. They need to have a permanent contract, and it is in the SACA program. Now, the biggest bottleneck of the reforms is the financing. Our heads of state said we will pay 0.2% of eligible import to the Commission. Only 17 countries, 17, are applying and abiding by that rule. It has to change. I'm not going to impose that on our leaders. It's not my intention, but I will advocate for it. It's very important to have, that particular issue of mobilizing and fostering financing be resolved immediately. Then our experts, there is a unit in the African Union Commission called the Reform Unit, led by Mr. Makoko, a very able African expert. But there are so many reforms that have not been implemented. One of them is PAP, the Pan-African Parliament. It's still a consultative organ. When is the Pan-African Parliament will become a legislative organ? They have passed in 2014 a protocol. Only 15 countries ratified that protocol. And this is one of the major reforms that we have to implement. Then we have on the judicial sector, the Court of Justice, the Commission of Human Rights. Sometimes they are fighting on issues. The Court of Justice do not open its doors to nationals, to African citizens, to NGOs. They are complaining. I am hearing complaints about the African citizens with regard to the Court of Justice. And then they are fighting who is doing what, the Commission of Human Rights. These reforms have to be implemented. And the Bureau of Liaison, a liaison bureau. We have so many on the continent. That's double use of those bureaus. Time is running, time is flying. So we have to rationalize. How can you imagine that you have 3 bureaus in the same region? And we're saying we should, have the golden rules for management. And whenever we want to touch one of the bureaus, it's a political matter. It's useless, but it is a political matter. The country that is hosting the bureau is saying you won't touch it. It has to change. It needs leadership. It needs understanding, negotiation, but it has to change. If you want to change things, we have to be frank and outspoken. We have to be, really tough when it comes to be tough, and lean when it comes to we have to do it. We have to do it.
Yes, sir, your time is up. And now, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of round 4. If you are just joining us, we've had 4 rounds, and each of them has touched on a thematic area. And now we will go for a quick break. When we come back, the candidates each have 2 minutes to share their closing remarks.
Mesdames et messieurs, nous remercions bien.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to thank our dear candidates for having responded to the last question of the fourth round of this Mjadala Africa Leadership Debate of the African Union. Thank you very much for staying with us. We'll come back in a few minutes. We're going to take another short break. And after the break, each candidate will have 2 minutes to make their closing remarks. See you in a short while.
Furahia Christmas kila wiki na deals kibao with festive discounts, jolly deals, holiday treats, cheerful bargains, merry offers. Furahia Christmas kila wiki na Carrefour.
Chrissy itadonjona Royco ukisema pilau ama mchuzi rojo wet and dry fry hadi nyama choma, hata ukitaka ugali greens na new chili cube pia itabamba. Zote zitadonjo ukieka Royco. Onjo uamini Chrissy itadonjo.
Tumejaribu baking, kuuza beauty product, deliveries.
What?
Imebaki tu kwa supply watenda sasa. Achi. Nataka kujaibisha tena. Kuna kitu impossible, no doubt.
I tried looking out for you, bro. Hey, you see now? How's the hard bud? Look now, it's burning.
Do not hold back in any situation. Eno gets to work on the 6 symptoms of heartburn fast.
What? You do know you said all of that out loud, right?
If symptoms persist, seek medical advice.
Furahia Christmas kila wiki na deals kibao with festive discounts, jolly deals, holiday treats, cheerful bargains, merry offers. Furahia Christmas kila wiki na Carrefour.
Skia, ni juicy. Flavors zote tamu tena fruity. Yummy na flow kama maji, juu ni tamu kama sali. Ni juicy. Are you bored? Kuna vitu zinakuudhi, usijali my bro, hebu kama taka juicy juni.
This week on Twende, we are going east. CO Eastlands, far east. Hey. To Malaysia, to make new friends. Salama pangi. After daring at home, tumeamua hata sisi tunaweza enda abroad. We will explore caves, climb a mountain without breaking a sweat, explore the cities, sample local food.
Yeah.
I also get to teach the locals a new dance style.
With just a payslip, Get a mobile loan of up to 500,000 shillings or an unsecured loan of up to 9 million shillings. Visit a Cooperative Bank branch today. Cooperative Bank. We are you.
This New Year's Eve, get ready to cross over in style. Titilitis Church, in partnership with NTV, presents Trade Praise Pop-Up Light Up 25 edition. Join us on December 31st from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. at Aga Khan Walk, Nairobi CBD. Experience electrifying performances by Guardian Angel, Alice Kimanzi, Moji Shotbaba, Jemima Thiongo, Jabidi, Ben Psycho, Shani, Muhanji, Manolo, Gavi Royo, Desito, Andrew Galelo, the Citilitis Worship Team, Arura Voices, Tune Band, Boss MOG, Timeless Noel, Mashmuana, DJ Zito on the deck, and the crossover crew, DJ Son of Nations and Susan Gray. Be uplifted by the word shared by Reverend George Mashari. Entry is easy. Just download the Healers app from Play Store or App Store and enter free. See you there.
Do you want to see the glory of God? Hallelujah. You see, a time comes when you get fed up of the things that you are experiencing and you want to get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. You want to see more and more and more. And when that time comes, then you wake up and say, God, what can I do? And then he gives you his revelation. And his revelation is here.
Just a payslip. Get a mobile loan of up to 500,000 shillings or an unsecured loan of up to 9 million shillings. Visit a Cooperative Bank branch today. Cooperative Bank. We are you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are back to our last session. My name is Anita Erskine, and I'm joined here by my colleague Fatima Sharif, who is our French speaker.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Anita. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us for this final lap of the Mjadala Africa Leadership Debate of the African Union. You have listened during the debate, the questions that were raised, the answers that were given by the different candidates, and we're coming to the end of the debate. And so, Anita, we're going to listen to the closing remarks to the candidates. So thank you very much, Fatima.
Candidates, you each have 2 minutes to share your closing remarks, or better still, your last words. We will start this round with His Excellency Raila Odinga.
Thank you. I am delighted to have the opportunity to address our people of Africa. And as I've said, I am ready to work for Africa. There are reforms that will be necessary so that AU can work more effectively. One of these reforms will be financial reforms, so that we are able to bring in the African private sector into the funding. I mentioned also the issue of sovereign funds that we can use. We can create a fund that will enable AU to do all its money work. Then there's issue of 0.2% of the duty, which only 17 countries are remitting. I will work to ensure that all the countries can pay their dues to the Union. This is what happens in the European Union, and that's why European Union is able to even fund African Union. It's a shame. If we can be able to fund this organization out of our own resources on the continent. And this is what I'm going to try to do. And I said that I am ready on day one when I'm appointed. I will not need any kind of induction. I'm ready to work for the continent, and I will offer my best. The days of Africa have come. The African lion will begin to roar and tell its Asian tiger counterpart and the European bear and the American jaguar that this is going to be Africa's millennium. 2000.
Dear candidate, I'm really sorry to interrupt you once again, but these are the rules of the debate. Nous allons maintenant, mesdames et
we are going now, ladies and gentlemen, give 2 minutes to the candidate of Djibouti closing remarks.
Thank you so much, and let me speak in Arabic. I would like to say that if I will be elected as the chair of the African Union Commission, I will be up to your aspirations and I will defend the interest of our continent, and I will work diligently to defend our continent, and with the full modesty, I think that I deserve it.
Je souhaite à nos pays, à nos peuples africains.
So I wish for our African people, our countries, a very happy 2025.
Tonight, I wish to all African nations and citizens all the best. Thank you for your support.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And now 2 minutes for you, His Excellency Richard J. Randemandrato.
En 2025,
in 2025, there will be a new team that will be leading for 4 years. Will be leading the African Union Commission for 4 years, and there shall be 8 high-level public servants like most of us, and we shall be the ones to continue with the reforms. We shall be a united team, a team that will have the team spirit to continue in the implementation of the 10-year plan of Agenda 2063. I do regret that this evening we're not able to handle subjects that are so urgent because we did not have enough time. Issues such as public health, the debt, issues of financing and financial institutions of the African Union, questions that have to do with the participation of the civil society and the diaspora, the questions that are linked to information and digital technology. I'm sorry we did not have time to deal with those issues, but on we shall have other opportunities, and I shall be able to make my modest contribution. Like in public sport, there have to be players, and there have to be those who choose, who select the players, those who select the heads of state. It is up to them to select the team that will lead the African Union Commission for their need. We need a leader. Men and women need a leader, and I hope that in 2025, the wisdom of heads of state and government will balance the team that will win, so that the Africa that we want can continue to win the battle for sustainable development. Thank you. Thank you very much for these closing remarks that have been made by the different candidates.
Candidates, ladies and gentlemen, please, another round of applause for our esteemed candidates. Tonight, we have heard from His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Foreign Affairs Minister Djibouti. We've also heard from His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga, former Prime Minister of Kenya. We've also heard from His Excellency Richard J. Randemandrato, who is the former Foreign Affairs Minister of Madagascar. Each one of our candidates has done an exceptional job talking about the thematic areas that were set before them. We've talked about advancing economic integration. We've talked about promoting peace and security as well as democracy, Africa's place in global affairs, and reforming the African Union amongst many. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an absolute honor bringing you Mjadala Africa Leadership Debate 2024.
Merci infiniment.
Thank you very much, Anisha. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the Mjadala Leadership Debate, direct streamed line from the headquarters of the African Union in Addis Ababa. We were delighted to have you with us for the moderation of this debate. Of course, we wish the different candidates all the very best. The election of the new chairperson will take place at the level of the African Union Commission. It will take place in February next year, and thank you to all of you for having been with us, and have a good evening.